What do you think, Doug? How was that for an intro?
Oh, that was great, Billy. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's fun putting those things together.
Yeah.
So we already got a bunch of people piling in here to the chat room. So let's see here. Let's see. All right, we got Just Janet Ruth is in. We have Buttworm is in. Who else we got here? We got Gary Kendrick is in here. Yeah, they'll keep coming in. So
Okay.
welcome everybody. Glad to have you on. And Doug, thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for the invite.
So we'll let everybody get to know you a little bit that hasn't seen you here and interviewed. So tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and all that jazz.
Well, right now I don't do a whole lot of anything. I retired a few years back, and it seems like I have more time to do stuff, but I get a lot less done now because I take too many breaks, I think. But, now, I got interested in Bigfoot about almost 20 years ago. I was hired. I got a job working at the library over in Cambridge, Ohio, and I used the library some. I'd go in and get a book now and then, but I never really spent much time back in the stacks looking around. But after I started working there, I discovered real quick that they had Bigfoot books on the shelf. And I thought, oh boy, I'm going to like this job.
Yeah.
So I started reading everything they had. And before long, I'd read everything that was on the shelf at that library. And one of the clerks says, well, we can get other books from other libraries. We borrow and loan and trade back and forth all the time. All you got to do is come up with an author and a title. So, we started doing searches online, and man, I had books coming in from left and right and all over the place. I just couldn't read them fast enough. And come to find out how noted for Bigfoot activity that Salt Fork was, which was just, this was Cambridge, Ohio, where I was working at the library, and Salt Fork's just 6 or 8 miles north of there.
Yeah.
And I knew a couple that had a sighting, and they come out with their story and spoke at one of the conferences about it. And so we met them out at the park, and they showed us where their sighting took place, and things just took off. And I had a coworker who still works at the library, and she was interested in it too. And we started hitting the woods every weekend. We'd go to around Salt Fork, sometimes up into Coshocton County, because that was one county west of there. And it just took off. And before you know it, we started a group, our SOSBI, which stands for Southeastern Ohio Society for Bigfoot Investigations. And we had meetings and campouts, and we united some of these witnesses together, so they had other people who'd also had sightings to talk to. Thought, thank God, I'm not the only one that's crazy and saw one of these things. And there are still people that started the first year coming to the meetings that had sightings, and they still come to the events. Yeah. And we camp out at the park, and I started writing books. I've got 6 of them published now. I've slowed down quite a bit as far as getting out into the woods. I don't get around like I used to. So if it's something that I can't navigate, I'll pass it on to one of the younger guys and let him investigate it. But I still love talking to the witnesses, in person and on the phone and getting their stories and possibly putting their story on the pages of another book.
Yep. Very good. So you said you have 6 books.
Yeah.
Probably one of the questions we'll have is, how can people get one of your books?
They can contact me directly if they like through Facebook. And, I have the books I self-published, and I have them right here in my own home, and I send them out, right from here.
Okay.
If they would prefer, they can go on Amazon and find my books on there, or possibly we'll meet up somewhere along the trails. I'll be at Hermitage, Pennsylvania. Let's see, coming up Saturday at the. There's what was the title of that? Was it a?
Yeah, it's the Penn, Ohio Paranormal Conference 2. Looks like it's going to be held at the, I think that's the Hickory Volunteer Fire.
Yeah.
It says post 6166.
Okay.
So, yeah. So from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Now, I won't be speaking. I'll have a table there and I'll have my books for sale. And then I do a lot of library talks.
Yep.
I do 10 or 12 of those. I've got one coming up in Pennsylvania and a bunch in Ohio, and I got one over in Indiana this year too.
Okay.
So the books aren't hard to find. Excuse me.
Now, is that the best way? Probably the best way for them to keep updated on where you're speaking is probably on your Facebook page. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
On the Facebook page or on our Southeastern Ohio Society for Bigfoot Investigations page.
Let me see if I can.
And
Let's see here. See if we can help people out here. Well, yeah, if you type in his name, you'll find him. If I put this profile up, it's not going. It's just going to be a bunch of letters, letters and numbers. So that's fine.
I will have to mention that I got hacked 6 or 8 months ago, and I don't know if my old profile is still up or not. But the correct profile, the real one, shows a picture of me sitting in a chair holding a cat.
Yeah.
And that's the good one.
Yeah, I think it is still there, Doug, because I think I checked the other day. So, yeah, as long as you see Doug holding his cat,
yeah,
you're good. So,
books are $18. I've never raised the price since I published the first one. I did have to raise the postage. It's up to $5.
Yeah.
But it's $5 per order, whether you buy one book or 4 or 5 books. It's still only $5 for shipping.
Okay, good. Good deal. So yeah, if y'all want any of those books, actually go ahead and tell us so you got 6 books. What are the titles of the books? And I know you said you were out of one of them.
The first one I wrote, I don't know whether this is backwards or not, but Standing in the Shadows is the first book I wrote, and I think this came out in, I believe, 2012.
Okay.
And it tells how I got started in it and how we met the crew from Finding Bigfoot, and they came to Ohio. Mm-hmm. They stayed in Cambridge for a week and did a lot of filming out at Salt Fork. And they had, the producer asked me over the phone when we were setting this up if I knew of any eyewitnesses. And I said, yeah, there's a lady that comes to our meetings that had a daytime sighting back in the summertime, back in, I think it was 1984. And she was actually on the program, the one that's called Buckeye Bigfoot. And her name is Lorena Cunningham, and she still comes to our meetings. And she's only too happy to tell her story to anybody that wants to listen. And she's never changed a word of it in all these years. The second book I wrote is this one, Hidden Encounters. Now that's the one I ran out of, and I just sent the money in a week ago to have them reprinted. So I'll be getting 500 more copies, but I don't know when. I hope not too long. Number 3, Screams in the Night. Number 4, Bigfoot Reports.
Yeah.
Number 5. And number 6 just came out, I think, last June.
Okay.
A lot of people have a real tough time dealing with their encounter or their sighting. Right. Some people embrace it and they have, boy, I can't wait to see another one. And they chase, out in the woods and they quit going fishing or hunting because they want to see Bigfoot again. Other people are just the opposite. They're afraid to set foot in the woods. I've had 2 or 3 people that told me after their encounter, they moved. They want to live downtown with concrete and steel and glass around them. They don't want anything to do with out in the woods anymore. So that's how I come up with the title for the last book.
Yeah, it's funny how a sighting or an encounter affects different people. We had a couple gentlemen. This has been many years ago. They had a sighting down in. It was over near Pocahontas Park, National Park down near. Goodness, where is that at? See, my brain has done. I'm getting so old I can't even remember. But a couple of us went down there to meet with them, and it was funny. We pulled off the side of the road where they had the sighting, and 2 guys got out, and we got out and we were talking to them. We're like, now where exactly did it cross? They showed us where it crossed. And they said, and it went right up through there. I said, okay, can you take us, show us the path, Oh, no, we're not going in there. We're just telling you it went there. So, I wouldn't go in there.
Yeah, it affects people like that sometimes.
Yeah.
I had a guy just absolutely bawling his eyes out over the phone. He was so affected by it.
Yeah.
And I said, you need to try to come to one of our campouts or the meeting and just sit with some of these other witnesses and just talk to them and find out from them how they dealt with it.
Yeah.
Because, it's a very traumatic thing. And can you imagine somebody that saw one of these things 50 or 60 years ago when you didn't have the internet? Mm-hmm. I mean, now I've had people say, I heard this thing and it sounded like a siren. And I got on Google and said, what animal sounds like a siren? And it come back Bigfoot. And I said, well, I'll be darned. I never would have thought of that. But you didn't have that 50 or 60 years ago. Right. So if you had a question, you had to ask one of your friends or your family or your neighbors. And that's when you got laughed at, made fun of. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, they clammed up and they're carrying this inside, walking around with all this. So that would have been terrible. Yeah.
Now, if anybody has a question for Doug, feel free to type it into the chat room. I will put it up on the screen, and then Doug will be able to answer whatever question you have, or to the best of his ability, right, Doug?
Yeah. Yeah, there's no guarantees.
Yeah. Yeah, don't ask us what Bigfoot is, because none of us know that yet.
I still remember years ago when we were talking down at, we were doing the yearly event down there at Cabela's at Wheeling. Yeah. And what was the fellow's name that worked there? Bud. He came up to the podium and started talking on the microphone, and he said, and this next guy is from the state of Ohio, and he's an expert. And I thought, oh God, don't say that.
Don't say that.
And first thing I says, I'm not an expert, but I appreciate, the kudos, but there are no experts. And there's some self-appointed experts.
Right.
Think they're experts, but
right. That's about what it adds up to.
Yeah.
All right. So have you yourself had an encounter or sighting?
I haven't had a sighting.
Okay.
However, we found tracks at Salt Forks a number of times. Shauna and I actually walked in up in Coshocton County. We were up in old strip mine territory, and we got this trail was so non-used that the vegetation on either side of this old Jeep trail was kind of growing together, and you had to bend down, to walk through.
Right.
And got out there so far, and everything was quiet and still, and we smelled the stinkingest, like rotten eggs.
Yeah.
Oh, who's that?
That's the hotline. That's the Bigfoot hotline.
We smelled this horrible, stinky smell, and I had we had a 35 millimeter camera and a video camera, and I don't remember which one I had and she had, but I think she had the camera. I said, turn that camera on, get it ready. And we kept walking real slow, thinking this thing's gonna or throw something or scream, and nothing. And eventually we walked out of that smell and continued on our hike until we come down off the hill and there was a road, and we looked at the number of the township road. So I thought, well, I have to remember that and put it in my notes when we get back. So we turned around and had to walk back up that same trail a mile back to the vehicle. Yeah. Well, when we got to that area where that stinky sulfur smell was, by that time it had cleared out. It was gone.
Yeah. Yep.
So we've heard vocalizations. Shauna actually heard the chatter one night out at Salt Fork at the campground. We've heard the howls. I've heard a yell out there. We found broken trees, everything but an actual visual. We have not had that yet.
Right.
So may never have that.
Hey, at least you've it's nice to at least find evidence of something.
Yeah.
I guess you would call that more of an encounter, the fact that you had the odor that was there when you went in, and when you came back, it was gone. I mean, that in itself tells you something was there, something was different. So, and some people have been doing this for, 20, 30, 40 years and never had an encounter or a sighting. So,
right.
You definitely don't want to tell people, oh yeah, you go in the woods and you always see something or hear something. And we know that's not true.
Yeah. And I've run across people that tend to come across that way. I used to do quite a lot of fishing, and there's always that guy that no matter what you caught and told him, he's going to one up you.
Yeah.
To where you don't even want to talk to the guy, just to avoid. Yeah.
Exactly. So, how about, here's a question that a lot of us get. What do you think it's going to take to bring proof of the existence of this mystery?
I think it'll take a body. I'm not advocating going out and trying to shoot one and bring it in.
Right.
But I would certainly think as long as these things have been around, there have been bodies. And for whatever reason, they're not working their way up to the surface to where the public can see them.
Yeah.
And I think, the powers that be have a lot to do with the general public not having access to this information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that someday, there is such a thing as Bigfoot. There's a breeding population of these creatures, but we're still waiting for that.
Still waiting. Yeah. All right. So everybody who knows you or doesn't know you, what is it that you would want? What would you want everyone to know about you, Doug Waller? What should everybody know about you?
What should they know about me? Well, I try to be a good listener. I believe you can learn a lot more with your ears than you ever will with your mouth.
Yep.
So instead of yakety yak, 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 just listen. And, since I've written these books, I try to really become a better listener to these people. And I don't coax them, but I'll, sometimes one thing that's funny, and it's happened several times, is people will start to tell me what happened when they had their encounter or sighting. And a lot of times I can put a word out there or something, and they'll say, yeah, how did you know? Because that's what, we've learned that they do. They're very curious, especially about women and children. Oh, this one old lady says, she said, there must be a stray dog or something it sleeps in my yard right under my window because it's bedded down right on top of my peonies and it killed them. And I said, well, have you seen the dog? I said, no, but it sure mashed the flowers. It killed them. And I said, you ever get the feeling of being watched? I said, yes, I do. And I said, well, they're very curious. And she told me she had back trouble and she slept in her recliner out in the living room. And she said she watches TV all the time. And sometimes she has a lamp on and she's reading, but there's a great big window right off to the side. And I said, I don't think you got a dog sleeping in your peonies. I think something stands there and looks in because it's curious.
Yeah.
And oh my, she was afraid of that. And I said, well, I don't really think it's going to break the window and come in and kill you. Hadn't done it yet. And
right.
You've given it no reason to do that. But I said, if you really want to treat, go out, have your husband go out and stand up and see if there's any smudge marks on the glass, maybe fingerprints or a nose print or something where it's
right. Right.
So your feelings of being watched were true. You just didn't act upon them. You didn't turn your head and look and see the thing looking and say, oh, I'm glad I didn't. I said, well, I can appreciate that.
You're going to scare her to death, Doug.
Yeah.
All right. So, how about mentors? Do you have any mentors?
I have a lot of people that I've done field work with, and I've read their books, and I've sat down and talked to them. And boy, let's see. I've been on the stage with a lot of famous people. Dr. Meldrum and David Paulides and Steve Calls and Bartholomew up in New York. A lot of them. Linda Godfrey. Yeah. I met Linda Godfrey. I didn't know who she was from Adam, or should I say Eve, when she came to the Creature Weekend. They pulled up in the parking lot right behind me, and I helped them carry their stuff in. And I developed a friendship with her, and she used to send me Christmas cards every year. And she came over to Cambridge. We had an event at the library, and I actually had her come, and she spoke and didn't charge a dime. She paid for her own hotel room. She brought her husband, but she spoke, and Jody Cook spoke. And, there was some famous people. And here I was, a newbie at this, rubbing elbows with them, but they all treated me fine. And she was such a dear lady, and I was so saddened to hear of her passing. Yeah. I wish I'd had more time to spend with her.
Yeah. She was good. She was very good, very nice, very good person.
Yeah.
So, all right, we got our first question here. So Gary Kendrick said, question for Billy and Doug. Do you think Sasquatch is more human or more animal? He says he's an animal guy himself, highly intelligent, but an animal in his opinion. What do you think, Doug?
I can add to that question a little bit. If you look at the sketches, because we don't really have that many actual photographs, we'll say, the Patterson-Gimlin frame from the video, some of these creatures look like an ape, a gorilla. Other ones, case being the sketches in David Paulides' book that Harvey Pratt drew.
Yep.
There's pictures in there, sketches they don't look apish. They don't look
Yeah.
like a gorilla. They look like a human being.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is it is it a subspecies, or is it two different animals totally together, or what is it?
Right. Right. Or are we seeing two different things? Is there, is there feral human beings living in the wilderness,
Mm-hmm.
and we're seeing those, but then yet there's also some type of primate, it could be both.
Yeah.
But you're right. If you look at sketches, I mean, some of them look more human, some of them look more ape, so there's several different descriptions out there, but there's also a lot of the same. But it's like us, Doug, we all look different. I mean,
Right.
we all.
An Eskimo doesn't look like an Aborigine.
Right. Right.
And, you can flip through a magazine or a geography book and see different ethnicities and people from different parts of the world that look nothing like these from around halfway around the world.
Right. Right. Height differences, some of them say they're lanky, skinny, lanky. Some people say they're very broad. So they all have different shapes and sizes.
Like when I was previously speaking about Lorena Cunningham, she had the sighting of a 7.5 foot tall female, broad daylight, down in Noble County, Ohio, in July of 1984.
Mm-hmm.
Was probably 25, 30 feet away from this thing. And it was watching her kids play on the playground equipment, and it was enjoying it. It had a smile on its face, and she made a sketch of that.
Yeah. She
said it was immensely powerful looking, huge chest, biceps, triceps. She said if it had reached out and wanted to grab me, it could have pulled my head off and broke me in half.
Mm-hmm.
She said it was built like a football player, a National Football League player. Well, she saw another one in 2004 that was probably another foot to 1.5 feet taller, which would have put it up around 8.5 to 9 feet. It was a different color. It wasn't female. It didn't show any breasts. She said it actually looked like an older one. It had like salt and pepper colored hair.
Mm-hmm.
And it was long and lanky, built more like an NBA player, a forward or something. So there you go. They're not all the same. And at least her two sightings were within, I'd say, less than a mile of each other. Now, is that two different, it was definitely two different creatures, but is that two different subspecies, or is that just one's short and stocky and the other one's tall and lanky?
Right. Yep. Yeah, you hear a lot of different eyewitness reports like that. So, all right, time has come to have some fun. So, as everybody knows, we always have AI create some songs about our guest. So, Doug has not heard these songs. So, we're going to see what Doug thinks about them and see if these sound like they're going to be hits. Here's the first one. I think the first one is a country song. Here we go.
Okay.
Doug woke up one morning with a plan in mind. He packed his truck and his gear. It was Bigfoot he would find. Through the hills of Ohio, he drove with grit and pride. A country boy with a mission to bring Bigfoot to light. With a camera in his hand, Doug ventured deep in the woods. He followed muddy tracks and searched wherever he could. From the great Miami River to the Hocking Hills so tall, Doug was on a chase. He wouldn't let Bigfoot fall. He's chasing shadows in the moonlight through the wild Ohio land. catching whispers in the forest, a legend that's close at hand. Oh, Doug Waller, the hunter, ain't gonna stop till the end. Hunting down the legend, Bigfoot in Ohio, my friend.
Pretty good, Billy.
Hey, that's not bad, is it?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
All right, now this one is kind of, I believe this is a soft rock or something like that. So
Okay.
play this one here.
Late at night, beneath the pale moonlight, Doug Waller sits alone with dreams held tight. He's on a quest, searching for the truth, a believer in the creature, the elusive Bigfoot. Through the valleys and the forest he roams, in Ohio's heartland he's hunting alone. With a camera in hand and hope in his heart, he's determined to find the Sasquatch, tear the doubters apart. Searching in the shadows through the misty woods, Doug Waller's on a mission to uncover what's good. He's chasing after legends, following the signs, hoping to capture proof of the creature's design.
There you have it.
Yeah, thank you. That's another good one.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. There's some hits right there.
Yeah.
Here we go. Here we go. JC says, "Is that Chris Stapleton?" Chris Stapleton singing about you, Doug. Yeah, those are always fun. Oh man. All right. So what is, out of all the, I know you've read a lot of BFR reports and a lot of those. What's your favorite sighting or encounter report?
Uh,
If you had one to pick.
favorite. I've got one that I wasn't aware of it for quite a while, and I read it one day, and I let me start at the beginning. Have you ever heard of the Minerva monster from
That
Ohio?
does sound familiar, yes.
The Caton family, and they had these creatures on their property. Up behind their house was old strip mine ground, and I actually got to meet Howie Caton and speak with him. And I had 2 or 3 other people with me, and one of them had been in on the original investigations back from I think it was the 80s, possibly,
Yep.
70s or 80s. But so I sat and listened to Howie talk up there in his driveway for about an hour or two, and his wife come down and she told some stories. So after I got back home, I started checking into that and investigating it more and reading more reports and stuff. And I found another one from a neighbor. And I can't recall the guy's name or anything, but when this took place back there again, I think it was the 1980s, this fellow was a kid and he lived in a mobile home, a trailer. And he was in his bedroom, and they had bunk beds, and he was in the top bunk. And I think his brother must have been older that slept in the bottom bunk, and he wasn't in bed yet. His bedtime was like an hour later. So the younger boy, he's in the top bunk by himself. The door's open, the bedroom door down the hall, and Dad and Mom and the older brother must have been down the hall watching TV. So I don't know if you've ever been in any of these old trailers, but they had window blinds something like what I have here. And then they had a crank that you go like that, and panes of glass would come out. Okay. So he had that window open and the blind pulled up, and it was nighttime. It was dark, and he's laying on top bunk, and he's not asleep. He's looking out the window, and humming, waiting on his brother to come to bed. And he saw a reflection in the glass, and it was long brown hair, and it was moving. It was something under the window that was moving. Well, he thought it was their dog, because they had a like an Irish setter or some kind of a long-haired dog that was kind of brownish, and he thought that's what it was. And he's laying there with his head just inches away from that pane of glass, and here a Bigfoot was standing on the other side of the trailer, and it reached in with its fingers, and he could see those fingers feeling that pane of glass, rubbing its fingers across it. And his eyes started getting bigger, and he's thinking, it's not the dog. Dogs don't have fingers. Well, I forgot to tell you, he was in his sleeping bag.
No.
Top bunk, he's in his sleeping bag, zipped clear up to the neck. And when he saw those fingers, somehow he launched himself off of that top bunk and hit the floor, still zipped up, and he's wiggling down the hall and screaming the whole way to his dad. And when I read that, when I first read it, I thought, oh, this is, my God, it's wonder the kid doesn't need, psychiatrist. And when I read that, I just lost it laughing. I said, that would have been so funny. Not if you were the kid, but if
right. That's called that's having fun with somebody else's experience.
Yeah. But Bigfoot provided a little bit of humor.
That's a good one. That is a good one. So, Doug, do you think these creatures migrate?
I think if they have to, because of harsh conditions, say in the winter, and there's no food supply or no place to get in and out of the, those cold temperatures or anything. Yeah. But if they've got everything they need, I think they probably just hole up and stay put. Because, here in Ohio, we've found tracks in the wintertime.
Yeah.
So, and maybe they're something like people, some people are snowbirds, and first time it gets kind of chilly, oh, let's go to Florida, take off.
Right. All right. So we're going to take just a small break here for an advertisement. It's only about a minute long, and then we'll be right back.
All righty.
All right. So, that's the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Camping Adventure.com coming up in September this year. Guys, go to that website. You can get your tickets to get in there, and it's going to be a good time. My understanding is, and I always mention this just because I think it's kind of cool, they're even going to have karaoke.
Huh.
So, yeah, you'll be sitting out in the pavilion. Hey, that might attract a Bigfoot.
Yeah, it might.
Yeah, you never know. But see, that might have been the secret the whole time. We didn't even know.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you can, y'all can make it, definitely get in there and get your tickets. And I think they have tables too, Doug. I didn't know if you already had one or not, but
No,
I think he's going to
not for that.
have tables. I think he's going to have like food trucks there and everything. It's supposed to be a pretty good deal. So
Yeah, you got to have the food.
you got to have the food.
You want to keep your people there.
That's right. So yeah, that should be interesting. Anyway, so let's get back to this. So what do you think about, because I know that we've seen some strange things in Salt Fork. What do you think these stick structures are, or these tree formations? Do you think that they're anything related to Bigfoot, or do you think there's something else?
Well, I think it's possible that some of them could be made by the creatures. Ones that would be practically impossible for humans to do. Yeah, I think there's a good possibility. We've found them ourselves at Salt Fork, sometimes right along a hiking trail. And people jump to conclusions and they say, well, kids could have done that. Well, that's possible. And I have to think, well, if I was a dad and I'm hiking the trail with my kids and all of a sudden they say, Dad, stop, because we want to build this structure. I don't want to stand there while they're doing this, because some of these would take an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. No, I don't want to stand there and do that.
Right.
And I don't know, unless they were teenagers, that they would be out there without parental guidance, watching them. But what if it was juvenile Bigfoots doing them, the little ones? Because we found little ones that could have been made by humans because they weren't, and they hadn't been cut with a saw, they'd been broken. But then again, we found the big ones, with logs that big around and 25, 30 feet long, that there's no way that a human or 4 or 5 humans could have picked that up and carried that in.
Right. Yeah, I've seen, some of the more elaborate structures, especially if you have sticks that are interwoven.
Yeah.
In with one another, the number, just the height alone. And like you said, some of them are so large, how would you even pick them up? But
yeah,
there's definitely some interesting stuff out there.
I'd like to know if anyone has seen the creatures constructing one of these. I thought that I had read somewhere that years and years and years ago, Bob Titmus was out on a trail in California or somewhere. And I don't know if he was wearing a ghillie suit or he was on the ground with brush covering him up, concealing himself. And he watched a Bigfoot, or maybe there were 2 of them constructing something, but I can't find that story again.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's true or not.
Right. Yeah, I can't recall it. That would be interesting though.
Yeah.
All right. What about wood knocking? What do you think about wood knocking? You think that's a Bigfoot? You think somebody's fooling around?
I think a lot depends on where it takes place. A lot of people say that Salt Fork is so inundated with Bigfoot researchers that anything you hear over there at the park is a human. It's not Bigfoot.
Right.
Well, I think that's 90% true, but I think there are places like the current naturalist over there, who now is a 100% believer in Bigfoot, used to be a skeptic.
Yeah.
And if you would show him evidence, he would try to refute that and tell you that, wasn't Bigfoot related because it was this or that. And I come right out and ask him, I said, what changed your mind? Because you used to be a skeptic. And I know because I talked to you personally and you didn't believe in him. And he said just being out in areas of the park where he knew there was no humans in there. He was the only human in there. And he would hear things, hear knocks and hear vocalizations and find stuff that, you know, in his own mind, he knew it had to be the real thing. It wasn't human related.
Right.
But Salt Fork does have an awful lot of people going out there and
lots of people
screaming and all kinds of stuff. So you will run into that too.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Now, do you think that's another one? We've had discussions about how many do we think there are? Do you think there's like several hundred, several thousand? What do you think?
That's just, how would you ever, you know, I know they'll do grid searches for deer, you know, and how everybody has a map and you write down, you know, where you find a set of tracks and then you put them all together and you can see where 9 deer went through there. But for Bigfoot, first of all, you couldn't get through every place that they get through because, you know, they can go through practically anything.
Yeah, right.
I couldn't tell you how many. I don't know. Hundreds probably.
Yeah.
In the whole country, maybe thousands.
Yeah, it's hard. I remember, and I can't remember where I read it, but I remember someone saying a couple thousand.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, I was like, you know, that could be, you know, I mean, it's not like we have sightings every single day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they are sort of rare. So I could see a couple thousand, but I do believe that, you know, there could be a depleting amount, you know, that, you know, they're not like completely thriving. So again, who knows? We really don't know. Now you're just are you a member of any other groups or just SOSBI?
That's really the only group I'm a member of. I mean, I follow a lot of other pages and groups on Facebook.
Yeah. Okay. And then expeditions. What's your thoughts on expeditions? Do you think they're useful? Do you think that they probably drive them away more, or do you think they're you know, that they do have a use?
Well, I kind of have mixed feelings on the high dollar ones. You know, if somebody's got $300 or $400 or $500 laying around and that's their thing, you know, I'm not going to say save your money, but you know, they're welcome to come to our SOSBI campouts, and it costs you $5 a night to camp.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going to promise you anything. You may not ever see anything or hear anything. But there again, you know, we've had activity right there in the campground at our campouts. They've had vocalizations. Well, Bill Rigby, we talked about, he had an actual sighting at one of the SOSBI campouts last year.
Mm-hmm.
And people have seen these crazy orbs floating around in the trees. And, you know, just there was a real mysterious light that appeared out there years ago. If we got time, I can tell that story real quick.
Sure. Oh yeah, we got time.
Okay, it was a SOSBI camp out, and it was like on a Friday night or a Saturday night. And I think I had been there, but since I have sleep apnea, I can't camp out there because I got to have my machine plugged in. So so I go out and sit around the fire and then go home, you know, and get in my own bed and hook my machine up. This woman from the Cambridge area was camped, and I think her father was also camping, and maybe some of her other family members. got up in the answer the call of nature, and there had been a pack of coyotes close by, and they'd been howling and yipping and carrying on, and the people had been listening to that for quite a while. So I can't remember what her first name is or was. She's passed away now, but she woke her dad up. And she said, I'm going to go to the outhouse, and I just feel more comfortable if you just stay up until I get back, because, all these coyotes. So she went to the outhouse and then came back, and she got her phone out, and she aimed it towards the trees. Now I think it was like 3:30 a.m., totally dark. But she aimed her camera towards the trees and put it on video, and she took like a 50-some second video. And I said, well, what were you hoping to capture? She says, well, just the coyotes making the vocalizations. And I thought maybe we might be able to see some of their eye shine, from the tree line. It was an open area where the outhouses were. And then just beyond that a little bit were the trees. So she played that video for like 50 some seconds and then stopped it and took one picture with her camera, and then puts her phone away and goes back to bed, goes back to sleep. Okay. She gets up the next day and, makes breakfast and talks to some of the other campers and drinks coffee and so on and so forth. Sometime during the day, she gets her camera out and she's reviewing what she'd recorded the night before. Okay, she's got a recording 50 some seconds long of just total blackness, and you can hear these coyotes carrying on. Mm-hmm. Then she said, well, I took a picture too. And she plays, pushes the button to look at the picture. And what she got was, and I have a picture of it in my book, and I'll let you see it.
Okay.
It's in my first book. Yeah, if I can find it. I should have had this ready. It shows the flash came on, and it shows the why can't I find that? There it is. Okay. You see the trees?
Yeah.
Now see up above it, there's light beams coming down.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
From up above. Yep. And I said, well, first of all, what were you taking a picture of? She said, well, I just thought maybe the coyote's eye shine would show up. So she takes this picture, 3:30 a.m., and it looks as if, I said, well, it looks like there was a helicopter over top of your head, over top of the trees, hovering and shining the light down. And she says, I said, what, did it sound like a helicopter? She said, I didn't hear anything except the coyotes. No sounds of helicopter. And I said, well, but you saw it. She says, no, I didn't see it either. I couldn't hear it. I couldn't see it. And yet the camera captured it.
Yeah.
I said, now that is freaky.
Yeah. Yeah.
For something to be up there and not make any sound, and you can't see that light. But in the photograph, I've got a bigger picture that's, you can see the colors in the beams coming down through the leaves.
Interesting.
So I have no idea.
That's why Gary Kendrick just posted. He said the light still gives him the creeps.
Yeah.
So we had not nothing like that, but when we did the Virginia expedition, we had orbs.
Yeah.
Again, Doug, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know what those are, but they're just lights. And the weird thing is the lights it was almost like they would come together, and it was almost like they would bounce apart.
Really? How big were they?
I don't know. I mean, they were way up. They wasn't way up, but I'd say they're a couple 100 feet up, but they look like the size of maybe basketballs.
Yeah.
And they would just come together and bounce apart. And they didn't have, it would defy, whatever it was. It wasn't like something falling. It wasn't a falling star, because they could go back up.
So they're floating like balloons.
Right. Yeah, like Gary said, softball size to basketball.
Yeah. Well, they've seen these out there at Salt Fork at this group camping area. And some of them are different colors.
Mm-hmm. I've heard different theories. Some people say it's ball lightning.
Yeah.
I can't say that I would. I don't even know that it's Bigfoot related. Maybe so it's something totally different. So I definitely don't want to think it's Bigfoot related.
Yeah. I have no explanation. Some people dismiss it and they say, I don't want to, don't even show it to me. I say, well, they're there in quite a few Bigfoot sighting reports. They see these things.
Right.
So I'm not saying, it's part of it, but maybe I am saying it's part of it. I don't know. It's worth looking into.
Gary says back in the mountains, we call them spook lights.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Doug, it has been an hour already.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, I know. I tell you, when you're having fun, that's what happens. It just flies by. So, anyway, so thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Coming on the show. Everybody remember, he will be coming up in an event this Saturday, so make sure you check that out if you get an opportunity. That is at the Penn, Ohio Paranormal Conference, March 30th from 10 to 6. And that's at the, I know I saw it earlier, the VFW Post 6166. So,
right.
If you want to go meet Doug and have a talk with him, or if you have an encounter you want to talk to him about, or
sure, I'd like to hear.
Yeah, exactly. More information for a book.
Yeah, might do another book and put your story in it.
That's right. All right. So again, thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, can you hold on just a few minutes while I end the show, and then I'll come back. I'll come back on.
Okay, I'll be here.
All right. Again, thanks everybody for coming on the show. Just a heads up, we will soon have a website. It will be SasquatchWatchRadio.com. They are still working on it, but since Facebook is getting ready to stop allowing live feeds on Facebook, we figured we better come up with another place to stream the show, along with YouTube. So just be ready for that. I will announce it when the website is ready. So again, thanks everybody for coming to the show, and we will see you next Monday night. Good night, everybody.